All right, now this is what is called a 2-to-1 Manhattan. So 2 parts of cherry bourbon, 1 part of sweet vermouth. Notice I put the sweet vermouth in first. It is the least expensive of those 2 ingredients. We always want to put our most expensive ingredient in second, in case a guest wants to change their mind. Maybe they see a bottle of a rare bourbon that they want to have in their Manhattan instead, or maybe they want to have it with scotch, which is called a Rob Roy. All right, so 80 mils. Now that is again 2 parts of what we had with the sweet vermouth. So 1 part sweet vermouth, 2 parts of our bourbon. Now what's fun about that is you can have a conversation with your guests, and some guests may like a little bit more booze forward Manhattan, say a 3-to-1, 3 parts bourbon or whiskey to 1 part of sweet vermouth. Or what I love personally is a reverse Manhattan. Reverse Manhattan, kind of fun to say, really fun to explain, but really delicious to enjoy. Now that would be reversing the proportion. So you would do 2 parts of sweet vermouth and 1 part of bourbon. Now why is that great? Because you're having the complexity of a Manhattan, but a little lower ABV, alcohol beverage volume, little lower alcohol, so you have all that sophistication of a Manhattan. But say you're going to watch a movie, you have a couple Manhattans, chances are you might nod off there in those beautiful, comfortable chairs with a pillow and blanket. But you have a reverse Manhattan, you're enjoying that complex, sexy cocktail, and you have your wits about you a bit more. So absolutely, if a guest is just saying, I want your classic Manhattan 2-to-1, but that reverse Manhattan, keep that in your back pocket. And again, keep in your back pocket, switch the bourbon to scotch. It's called a Rob Roy. All right, so now that that is in there, we now are going to add our ice. Now the ice is the last thing because we want to have everything in there. The ice at the last moment because we don't want to dilute the cocktail. We want to chill it beautifully, but we don't want that ice melting until we deliberately are stirring. And then it's going to dilute just a little bit to make it absolutely perfect. All right, don't skimp on the ice. So 1, 2 nice scoops of ice in there. Now notice also I'm going to put a pinky and a thumb. A pinky is going to go on the bar top. A thumb is going to go on the edge of my Japanese mixing glass. That's going to keep it from moving around. Again, so it's going to be something like that. All right. So now 33 stirs or 7 Mississippi, whichever you're into, but they basically came out the same. That I have found is really the perfect dilution. Learned that from Peter Dorelli. Peter Dorelli, for about 30 years, was head bartender at the Savoy in London. World famous for their stirred cocktails. And I had lunch with him a few years ago and asked him how many stirs for his Manhattan and his Negroni and his Martini. And he literally had to just kind of create an imaginary spoon there at lunch. And he said, oh, 33. So it's worked really beautifully for me. It's just enough to mix it beautifully, just enough of the ice to melt, just a touch to bring the ABV down, just to be absolutely perfect, but not to over dilute. All right. Once that is stirred, now the other reason for this is we weren't introducing air in here. We're just introducing the ice into the spirit, so we're getting a little bit of dilution, but really pulling it through the ice to chill everything out there. Now, what you're going for is this velvet smooth. Again, think of that bottle of tequila or vodka that you kept in the college refrigerator after college or whatnot, or whenever you turned of age, and had that beautiful chilled velvety texture. That's really what we're going for. All right, so now we have our stemless martini glass. At this point, we could take this, we could dump this into another stemless martini glass. So that one is already chilling and ready to go when we sell another cocktail. All right, so now we're gonna take what's called a julep strainer. Now, there are a couple different strainers we use. Hawthorne strainer, this is generally used for shaken drinks. And this would be, if we had a cocktail that was shaken, it would come out of our tin. Again, which cocktail do we shake? Anything with fruit, and that's gonna be the Hawthorne strainer to strain it. Now, any drink that is all booze, all liquor, you guess it, that is gonna be stirred, and that's gonna be our julep strainer. All this has to do is separate the ice from the liquor. That's why it doesn't need all those really tiny little perforations in it. It's just for separating the ice. All right, so that fits right inside here. And now we're gonna pour. Now what you're looking for here, just beautiful velvety texture. I mean, this is just gorgeous. You can see the viscosity in it, which is really part of the enjoyment of this cocktail. Absolutely beautiful. And you're not seeing any froth at all on top. Notice I'm also picking up from the very base. Just beautiful, gorgeous, a little bit of mahogany hue there from that cherry bourbon. Beautiful. All right, now a couple more finishing touches. Maraschino cherries. Now we make our own maraschino cherries. This is one of the things that should just roll off your tongue as kind of what makes us unique at iPic. The things I like to say are, hi, welcome to iPic. Have you been here before? If they haven't, well, I just want to let you know a couple things about our cocktail. We're a fresh bar. We make our ginger beer from scratch. We make our maraschinos from scratch as well. And what that's going to do, it's going to let your guests who normally would order, say, a Moscow Mule, say, hey, wow, Moscow Mule, vodka and ginger beer. They make their own ginger beer. Amazing, amazing. So that's already going to set us in a higher quality tier. But also, when a guest hears that we make our own homemade maraschino cherries, maraschinos are generally going into very classic cocktails. The guest psychologically is going to think, well, if they're making their own maraschino cherries, then wow, I bet they can make a great Manhattan or a great Negroni or a great Rob Roy. So we're going to have 2 cherries, and notice these don't have the stem. These have been pitted. They're sour cherries. We infuse them with maple syrup, our cherry-infused bourbon, and Luxardo maraschino liqueur. Now, Luxardo maraschino liqueur is made from Morisco cherries from North Italy. That's where the name maraschino came from. So they literally take these beautiful Morisco cherries, they ferment them into cherry wine, they distill that. So again, 1/3 of that Luxardo maraschino, 1/3 maple syrup, 1/3 cherry bourbon. Our sour cherries, that is literally put into a glass jar or into a deli. Equal parts of each just to cover the cherries. That sits in the refrigerator overnight and it's ready to go. And it's good for a couple weeks because there's plenty of booze and maple syrup in there. Now we're gonna do 2 of those. You don't need a skewer on these. The idea is you're gonna let those just sink to the bottom of your Manhattan. And think of it as they're having this, they're kind of hanging out together in a hot tub. Instead of a hot tub, they're in a Manhattan. And it's kind of the guest reward. They finish their Manhattan. These beautiful homemade maraschino cherries. Now, very, very important, bitters. Now, bitters are that last finishing touch. They're kind of like the finishing salt to a chef, or a little bit of truffle oil on some fries or something of that nature. And we are using for the Manhattan Regan's orange bitters. Now, Gary Regan, he wrote The Joy of Mixology. He wrote The Bartender's Bible. He has actually over 16 different cocktail books and new classic cocktails, The Martini Companion, The Book of Bourbon. Absolutely amazing. Bartends and teaches all over the world. And these are his bitters. And he is dear to my heart as one of my mentors, and he also taught me how to make bitters. So beautiful orange bitters. There's a little bit of cardamom in there as well. And we're gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dashes right on top. Now, bitters are quite high in alcohol, generally anywhere from 80 to 90 proof. This is actually 90 proof or 45%. So they're gonna float right on top because our Manhattan was 80 proof bourbon and 17% alcohol sweet vermouth, stirred, so that diluted it a little bit more. And so that alcohol is lighter, it's gonna float right on top. And what you can do is now, I smell that beautiful orange, a little bit of cardamom right there on top. It's gonna add a little bit more complexity. Again, bitters are always that last finishing touch. If I had mixed it in with the bitters, then we would have really lost all those kind of nuances. So this is our cherry bourbon Manhattan. It's our signature. Again, a classic 2-to-1. You can do the reverse and do 2 parts or 80 mils of sweet vermouth and 40 mils of cherry bourbon. You can switch Scotch and turn it into Rob Roy. There's also nothing wrong with a aged rum Manhattan. Absolutely gorgeous. Or an añejo tequila Manhattan as well. So have some fun. It's all still that basic classic. Beautiful, silky texture. And one last thing to kind of wrap your head around a Manhattan. Think about the original cocktail. One of the other videos we did and one of our signatures is our old fashioned. That was really the original cocktail. Simply rye whiskey and sugar and bitters. So a Manhattan is really a wine modified old fashioned. Think about it. The original cocktail was booze and sugar and bitters. A Manhattan is booze, in this case bourbon, and sweet, which is sweet vermouth, which is a wine that's aromatized with botanicals and sweetened, and then bitters. So literally it's an old fashioned modified with wine. That's really what a Manhattan is at the end of the day. It's a beautiful cocktail. Enjoy selling it. And cheers, the cherry bourbon Manhattan with homemade maraschino cherries and Regan's only orange bitters, only at iPic. One more sip. I love this drink.